Greetings and welcome to Liminal Light, a show that explores the languages of myth and star, earth, sky, tongue, and spirit through weekly astrological forecasts. I'm your host, Chris. Enjoy. Venus strolled into her sign on the morning of the 14th, stratifying Libra with her virtue in lubricating the scales, smoothing roughness, and moistening motion. Mercury and the Sun benefit from her patronage here. The director of the brand is in the atelier, and all the luncheons, business meetings, and client fittings will be attended to. More than mental fitness and ease of abstraction, the spirit of beauty and appreciation of culture in collective communication, the bustle of museums or outside in the parks, the buzz around a concert or sense of camaraderie at a popular fair. Then the Sun is not stuck managing duties he is not suited for, and Mercury is relieved to step back down into the sector of communications and measurements. What had been lacking in Libra season is restored. This, along with Jupiter's ingress into Scorpio, brings very new tides and connotations to the season, and the 14th marks the excellent occasions to create Venus talismans. Interestingly, the moon steps across the north node as Venus ingresses, maybe reminding us of sub-narratives that ultimately shape the plot more than what has been seen on the surface. The moon is then over Regulus's orb while Mercury opposes Uranus on the 15th, getting a jolt of wild innovation that might be broadcast in the lunar network in Virgo. These are very different configurations to the ones present during the August eclipses, although touches to previous sensitive points during a transitory time might allow glimpses into what the sculpture looks like now that it has had time to be transformed behind fate's curtain. Had it been a bust, a face can only change so much before the identity is altered with it. Was it a business? When a bard is more entertaining than selling drinks, they become a concert hall or a theater. Was it a routine? After so many repetitions, you are what you practice, whether that is a musician or a weightlifter. Was it a family or a group of friends? Depends on how many people are married or tied by blood. Both things can change and one become the other from only a few critical circumstances. This is maybe an aside, but something to keep our eyes on, as a dramatic eclipse such as the one we had usually results in pivotal changes. And as I said, the Sun tends to act as a pivot point in Libra, where personal identity is secondary to the process. This grows more acute in Scorpio to come, as the identity is a cartoon to be thrown into acid barrels. But we'll save that theme for a future broadcast. Mars also opposes Chiron here. Something to think about. By array of angle, we've had planets trailing through opposition to Uranus and aspect to Chiron in succession for a few weeks. This highlights what is innovative and volatile, and what the solution might degrade or destroy, and how or if we might heal or fix it afterwards. Mars can do little to heal except to amputate or cauterize, both characterized by foxhole surgeries. Here Mars is hot metal applied to contaminated water. What we might see is an attempt to sterilize by boiling. What jolts Mercury to electricity, possibly in the same sense of the social sort, suggestive of ritual. Colloquies so charged our colloids boil, and the steam that rises carries away with it the sickness. After the jolt of individuated personal fire, we receive to our thinking about diplomatic communication systems, the Sun's sextile Saturn. We have a vision of bonds that connect individual aims, that form a substructure of chains beneath the flesh of the community, and are able to see the hard skeleton of the scales for not just what they are, but what they intend, like scales retrofitted to double as compound bows, which whole communities wield, or missile in tandem. All who stand within the circle are held in the cell of the chaos star. Following these realizations, Mercury switches signs and conjoins Jupiter in Scorpio on the 17th, simultaneous with the moon's conjunction to Venus in Libra. This occurs on a Tuesday, Mars's day, and will be probably dulled during subsequent planetary hours of Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, and Moon, but can also drape over the whole day through Mars being in Mercury's domicile and Mercury in his, a mutual reception by sextile of signs. There is an interesting array of significances here. Jupiter drives people towards individual inner transformation, and Mercury pairs up with these drives to communicate with others and reveal the nature of their own personal quests. This could be a meet your guru moment for some, or at least an opportunity to incept transformational collaborations, or see through collaborators or lovers' actions into the heart of what their metamorphosis is encapsulate, like a viewing window into the chrysalis or the observance of the glass retort. Meanwhile, the waning moon conjoins Venus in Libra. The genuine charm and elegance of the hostess is augmented by a neutralizing grace, which enables the welcoming drain of past aggressions. Someone who can listen to you let it all out, and is ready to clothe your nakedness in garments of glamour, and happy to lead you toward new delights and entertainments that focus more on aesthetics of beauty and arts culture. This combination of all that transpires on the 17th is very intriguing. Traveling to visit a cultured friend you haven't seen in a long time, you spill your guts to them on the ride over to her art gallery where there is an opening. You only have your travel clothes, but she lends you a fashionable jacket and chic accessories. The painting and sculptures are of primal, deep, and probing nature. She introduces you to a cast of intriguing occultists who are at once intense and charming. The end of the night has you in a spin of gripping dialogues and expand your horizons and whet your appetite for real personal change. You wonder if you have met your soulmate, but maybe they are not that, but instead your spiritual guide. You're not sure. You analyze their intentions between sentences and look for what is between the lines. And after some wine, you figure sex might be the best decision-making tool. You kiss your friend goodnight and lose yourself to lovemaking that is both fresh and therapeutic. New life tunnels may be opening up unexpected in the shadows that your previous life cast. Something along those lines, even just as seed fantasy, reshapen to where all in all falls in your nativity. 2 days later, on Thursday, October 19th, we get a new moon in Libra, opposite Uranus in Aries. Again, we get the formula of new friendships, relationships, and alliances forming out of the blue that are charged with innovative opportunity and revolutionary inspiration. The kind of newness that may disrupt your current or previous life, but not necessarily to its detriment. Of course, Uranus is unpredictability incarnate, so this could hit each individual with a different voltage, and alternately, jackpot buzzers sound, door prize horns honk, or punishing shrapnel whips past you as you stand in the booth grabbing at the flying money. These are not USD notes, but social currency on closer inspection, handwritten phone numbers or pages pilfered from little black books. The lunation takes place just after crossing into the 17th lunar mansion of Alucio. The Picatrix says, "Everyone agrees that you should create friendship with a friend when the moon is in this mansion, so that the friendship will be durable and never destroyed. And likewise, all images for lasting love ought to be made." Preliminarily, as it tends to do, being concerned equally with malicious as well as helpful magic, the entry speaks of making images to accomplish deception, besiege cities, make buildings more stable, and save sailors upon sea. The variety of results is specifically accomplished by placing either benefics or malefics in prominent positions or at the angles of the election. Irregardless, the array of possibilities contained within this mansion remind us of Uranus's tower-like reputation, which colors this Libra new moon, one of rendezvous, handshakes and embraces made during electric storms, earth-shakings, wild celebrations, tumult, or the event horizon of major scientific discovery. These may be the experimental relationships that form new chapters or at least deliver the death blows to old ones. whether or not that trial period of the hypothetical relationships are terminated before full subscription. Appropriately, Mars walks into Libra on the 22nd, highlighting the pros and cons that define experimental periods. Venus, previously described, is our ideal hostess who organizes charming soirees and galas to the cultural delight and personal pleasure of all her guests equally. Mars in Libra might want to bear arms against injustice, even within such an ideal fairy tale reality. He may throw red paint through the champagne spume and bubble onto the patronesses of the arts and philanthropists who funded the affair simply because they wear fur stoles, have capital, and are of the dominant class. This is precisely the wrong time for such battles, and Mars here flees from connecting with people or defending himself, except when injustices to others flare his temper. This is maybe the quiet guy in a movie who goes ballistic when someone insults his mother or makes a pass at his girlfriend. The experimental and transformative revolution of relationships spelled out throughout the week prior prefaces this quite nicely as a time to see that these new alliances really look like and how our new friends really function as tastes and behaviors either complement or clash, and we are made to bear our true natures to those we have entangled with. Granted, Venus is in rulership here, so even though Mars can be disturbing, passive-aggressive, or overreactive, it is Venus who counters him with elan and charm, and slathers on the song and dance, lets the grapes dangle down, placing an appropriate amount of flagons, jewels, flowers, and feathers to the other side of the scale accordingly, in reaction to his stomps, slouches, sulks, and sinking down. The great hostess who hide quarrels and culinary blunders and flutterings of libation and flurries of fugue. This form of Venus is decadent without being brash or tacky, luxurious without being ostentatious or opulent, glamorous while remaining classic and timeless. She dances openly without being gratuitous. She makes love freely without being licentious. She speaks her mind truthfully without wounding or distressing. She sings without fear, so her voice sounds sonorous no matter how sweet. And it is here we realize that it is her poise that steers our perspective. We think and experience with level heads because we encounter expressions of grace which are contagious. This is true too for Mars. When he is chaperoned by her, he is a noble savage, and he will have her extended company until November 7th, at which point she transitions into the sign of Scorpio. And then the tables turn, oscillating in a suggestive and seductive way, leading Venus into more darkened boudoir bedchambers. For now, the frolicking carousal of the gala gathering is in full swing, so we refrain from taking Venus fully below decks just yet. Okay, I'd like to welcome back my co-host Bonnie.
Good afternoon. Happy Sunday.
Good afternoon. And also welcome our guest today, Ryan Riehle, who is a musician, a stone worker, energy channeler, and all-around mystical gem.
And fashion icon.
And fashion
Hello.
icon.
Yeah.
So we're talking to you from California.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here.
What's the scene?
I'm sitting in the middle of a bunch of redwoods.
Oh, nice.
Sun's coming up. There's a lot of deer around. And, yeah, pretty mellow out here today. Good light, golden light.
What part of the state is
This
that?
time of year.
What part of the state is that?
California on the coast. Cazadero. Yeah. And, right next to where the Russian River meets the ocean.
Are you smelling the smoke right now?
No, not now. It hasn't been in here for like the last day, but I think it's still burning. The hellfire is burning everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but I'm pretty out of it.
I'm sure the listeners have been following that on whatever news source they look at. But it's interesting to note before we get rolling with what's coming up, because last week we talked about that we had a full moon in that occurred in Aries, Mars's sign, and then the sun, is opposite the moon during a full moon in Libra's sign, and right at the exact same moment we had a conjunction, a partile conjunction with Mars and Venus in Mercury's sign of Virgo, while Mercury was applying to a conjunction with the sun. So it's definitely a crazy male-female Mars-Venus interaction. And I talked to some other people in San Francisco who were like, didn't know what the astrology of the moon was, but they had mentioned, they were like, this is crazy. Everyone is so angry, and everyone is really acting insane. And I was like, oh yeah, well, it's crazy Aries full moon. So it's just interesting that it occurred with this crazy fire moon, the fires out there. And I haven't checked to look, but the same techniques you use to track locational astrology to figure out where someone could have their best or worst life, depending on what lines are going through. Like when you're born, it's like all the trajectories of all the planets as they're going around the Earth. You can find those lines and where they all went. And they use the same technique with mundane astrology, because the tract of the moon would have gone around the Earth in a certain way that day, and or how it related to the angles, like the ascendant, descendant, etc. And that full moon Aries line could have gone right over California. I haven't checked yet, so that's just speculation. But I was going to check and see if that was the case, because that would make the most sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was really crazy out in the ocean that day, because I was surfing, and I was just cruising down the coast looking at it, and it reminded me of the way the ocean looked after the Fukushima and all the tidal wave happening, and I was in Peru, and just seeing the ocean there being affected by that. It was like this washing machine effect where like everything was just churned up like as far out as you could see. And the ocean looked like that day. There was like 16-foot waves, and it just looked like somebody put a big spoon in it and just stirred it up from the middle.
Yeah.
And that was really bizarre.
That's interesting, because you are going to get tidal activity with a full moon, but then with an Aries moon, you'd imagine it would be the most churning and the most violently churned of the whole zodiac of full moons. Yeah, it definitely made some like different things happen in different spots. There's this one beach I like to go to that usually is just flat, doesn't have any waves. It's like sort of on a different angle. And that day it was just like perfect waves there that usually never happen. But it was incredible there. Everywhere else was just like madness, though. It like was kind of interesting to watch, but it was just crazy. Yeah.
But I had this feeling that something was up. It definitely had that feeling in the air.
Yeah, in Maine we're on the water, but it's the bay, so we don't get the waves like you would on the open ocean. But I definitely saw the effects in people's behavior.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot of love fest that I observed, and some accidents, some unfortunate stumbles and falls.
Oh yeah.
There was definitely, I saw some blood. I saw some making out, like within moments of each other.
Yeah.
So what's our first aspect of discussion, Vaughn?
The moon over Regulus's orb while Mercury opposes Uranus on the 15th.
Okay, yeah. Mercury opposing Uranus is going to be interesting. We're going to get something different with that than we've been getting with Jupiter this whole time. Just because Mercury has a much easier time dealing with Uranus. Jupiter, we've talked about this a lot because it's been a big theme over the year. Jupiter in Libra opposite Uranus, and in Aries, and Jupiter wanting to kind of like make deals and alliances and settle things down and make things cooperate and balance all the things out between disputes worldwide and personally, but especially in that last decan Libra, it had a more kind of worldwide balance, like geo balance kind of connotation, and then certain individual expression and flare-ups of individual fire, just basically putting a lance in Jupiter's balloon, But with Mercury, Mercury takes the innovation and the kind of like eureka moments, the experimentation, like almost like the laboratory experimentation of Uranus, and makes use of it. It's how Mercury being like Gemini and Virgo there's these kind of science metaphors, and then he finds his exaltation in Aquarius, which is also very like science metaphor related. And so it's, those kind of things happening in a laboratory setting are much easier to handle. You imagine more something like atom smashers and things like that. It's something that real big advancements in understanding that, can be disruptive to the experiment at the time, but afterwards you're like, okay, that experiment went absolutely crazy. Now we know something, and that's still happening in Libra. So there's kind of a social experiment connotation to it, which, that's always interesting. And we don't, as people, in communities and in relationships, we don't always know when we're in the experiment. Some people are very much, they set those scenes, and other people just get experimented on.
The laboratory, huh?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, you could probably relate with that. I've definitely set up some social experiment laboratories with you in the past.
I feel like it's a big topic.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that idea of like who's being tested on, what's being tested.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like such a part of like the times right now where people are like really just sort of confused about what the intentions of, or like the plot.
Yeah.
Controlling the plot, really.
Yeah, the plot seems very suspect. Yeah, so that might be like a time, around the 15th where we get a flare-up of that activity. Yeah. And then it also might be a time of insight into the plot. Like, whoa, like that's pretty clearly, like invented,
So in that time, you wrote that Mars also opposes Chiron here, and wanted you to expand on that.
Yeah, okay, so Mars opposing Chiron there. I think I mentioned how Chiron is going to be, Chiron is like the wound you're born with. If we're talking in a natal way, it's like you're born with this wound, and it's your lifelong project to heal it. Your destiny to heal it, or not. I mean, it's kind of volitional. I always describe Chiron as like the moment you start trying to fix this problem. Like it's like a thing like you don't like public speaking. Maybe that's where your Chiron is, and every time you're forced to do that, it really hurts. You shy away from it. It's painful, but once you're like, I'm really going to get on top of that, I'm going to heal that. You'll see that Chiron is really receptive to that, because it's also being the wounded, and it's also the healer mythologically. So it's gonna, it's like the superstructure that gets pushed over really easily once you put some pressure to it. And so, but with Mars opposite Chiron, you're like, okay, we're gonna heal this thing, but all we have is like this chainsaw and this like hatchet and this torch, or this blowtorch. And so they're not really the tools that you'd want to delicately attack something like that with, but there's possible like amputations or cauterizations that may or may not work depending on, if this is like shrapnel on the leg and it just has to be amputated. Mars is the one that's going to act fast. It's kind of like the survivalist fix, like in the forecast I said like foxhole surgery. But also it's kind of, you think of like, because Chiron is in Pisces at that moment, that it's like sterilizing water, like boiling water until it's sterile. Like you have this big sick soup, and if we're talking about the same time about that social experiment, it's happening right at the same time. that there's some element of just this poison brew, you know, that maybe we can boil off, like what's the bacteria out of it, or do some sort of maneuver of distillation.
Yeah, and that would be in relation to the fact that it's in Pisces.
Yeah, in the watery sign.
Yeah, and then maybe even like some sort of psychic way of addressing that, or like not necessarily combating, but like working with the relationship with Mars at that time, giving it an outlet.
Yeah, I didn't think of that, like this psychic, all the psychic connotations to Pisces. But yeah, it's like the far end of the emotional system that's into the spiritual system, where you start getting, where like the imagination, you know, is so strong that there's like possibility for like premonition and telepathy and precognition and visions and premonitions that like you can maybe get some sort of oracle out of it, or some sort of do you mean like using psychic energy too, like using your energy to boil it off? Right? Yeah.
And then there's also the idea that it's really like a personalized thing for each individual, right? Like what your relationship with Chiron is.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and then so sometimes you see that like the your natal body or planet being, like I definitely saw that with the eclipse, like what signs or what points in the chart the transiting eclipse points were in August were being activated. But it was such a heavy eclipse that I also saw people's personal, like the natal placements of their eclipse points also being triggered at the same time. So sometimes you'll get that, like that, where if something really triggers this Chiron in Pisces, say you have your Chiron in Sagittarius, that's how you might experience it. Or it might just be that you get it by transit, you know, like you get like the Pisces part of your chart opened up in a Chiron way, you know, like you're say you have like Pisces in the 10th house. This could be some sort of like, there's some sort of like, it could even be literally that everyone gets a flu at your work, you know, and that you have to like be really careful with sterilization, like for a couple days, you know, that like there's some contaminated water, you know, that or bacterial like sneezes on the door handles and stuff, and you have to like wash your hands all the time. Like it's you'll get like the mundane metaphor as much as the you'll get both, like the actual occurrence, you know, pretty literally, and like the mundane thing. So you could get like even like a psychic dream the night before that everyone has the flu at work, and you get there and people are like sniffling and like complaining about their throat and stuff. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's another way sometimes I'll think of stuff like that is if like, let's say there was like something accidentally even happened, you know, like an unknown influence, you know, that creates a certain situation that maybe you wouldn't have been able to get to had you tried to plan it out well, you know what I mean? But like, that something else sort of happens and you have to roll with it, or it's there and you don't even know about it, but you end up getting what you were looking for out of it.
For sure.
Yeah, and that's basically what we're tracking with astrology in general, is just like having a thematic system that helps you find that stuff quicker and easier and with more clarity, you know, because that's otherwise you're just kind of lost you're just getting blown around out there, right?
Yeah.
All right, so in your forecast, you write, following these realizations, Mercury switches signs and conjoins Jupiter in Scorpio on the 17th, simultaneous with the moon's conjunction to Venus in Libra. This occurs on a Tuesday, Mars Day, and will probably be dulled during subsequent planetary hours of Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, and the moon, but could also drape over the whole day through Mars being in Mercury's domicile and Mercury in his, a mutual reception by sextile signs.
Yeah, so you're not really sure which way you're going to get that, but you're... Yeah, it's kind of like when you see the way things play out, like, so like Mercury takes the place of where Jupiter was, like, for the whole year since January of 2016. Or right now, yeah, I think you started back in 2016 all through 2017. These occasional oppositions with Uranus and Jupiter, and Jupiter finally moves over into Scorpio right after Mercury gets hit with Uranus. And so Mercury kind of like sees the perspective, and Mercury's like our translator and the messenger. It's delivering messages here and there, so it finally gets to see what Jupiter's been dealing with this whole time with these Uranus blasts. And then right after Jupiter moves into Scorpio, and you almost can think of it as like there's kind of like a reaction. It's like a reaction to well, Jupiter already moved into Scorpio the week before, but Mercury hits the Uranus point, and then Mercury moves into Scorpio and conjoins Jupiter, and kind of it's like this reaction from the Uranus, like revolutionary, like tower card kind of you get this innovation and this Promethean fire, but you also get this total disruption. And it very much is like, because it's all that Libra stuff that's been the theme with Jupiter, and then it's Libra season. We have all this other stuff in Libra, and this kind of social dynamics and relationship dynamics, but also that you can take that all the way to the society level, because there's all those Libran connotations of justice and what's right, and how people should treat each other, and how they should refer to each other, and how, what's politically correct, or on all the different echelons of how you could think about that. But and then Jupiter moves into Scorpio. Mercury follows Jupiter into Scorpio and just looks at completely different topics. Just looks really down and inwards to the self, and into like inner transformation, and the death and rebirth, and diving into the soul, and metamorphosis, and all the way into that like that darkness. Like it's more of like a poisonous realm. It's all the realm of the occult, and then and that's a really different theme than like that huge, long, kind of failed Libran theme, that because Jupiter never really got to accomplish anything there. Everything kept getting foiled. And so it just enters a whole new period where there's probably like kind of a disillusionment and a disenchantment with whatever those political themes and like that weren't able to be achieved. And people are like, okay, well, time to move into like, we need to all change ourselves. Then everything needs to change, from a really fundamental level. We need to look at different philosophies that kind of destroy everything and allow it to be like to be born again and new, and in a more like integrated form, because Scorpio also has that connection with other people thing going on that Libra does, but in really different. It's not necessarily trying to balance with other people, but just kind of like one by one hit these really intimate points, and have that be kind of the crux of the change. And so yeah, it's just really interesting to see the philosophy change, and then right after the whole thinking and communication changing and catching up with the philosophy really fast. There's definitely some sort of, it's only 13 months, so it's not these generational paradigm shifts, but it's definitely going to be a localized paradigm shift in time.
Yeah, and that's coming. This is in relation to the 15th, or this is looking into the future.
The 17th.
Yeah. Well, Jupiter's has already moved into Libra on the 10th, and then this is coming up on the 17th, where we're going to see.
17th.
Yeah. Because Jupiter's only made it right over the border, and then Mercury catches up and conjoins Jupiter there. And Mercury's starting to move really fast at that point, but it's definitely going to be a touch worth noting, to where you see like that's probably going to be the first time you see the philosophies that are kind of starting to gain coherence getting ready to expand for the 13 months of Jupiter in Scorpio, like, get really communicated. You know, like, Mercury hits that point and people are like, yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, you know, or like, I just got this book, I just started reading about this kind of thing. And you always see an interest in the occult and witchcraft and stuff like that be reborn kind of every 13 years when Jupiter swings back through Scorpio. So, you know, and that's like it's like the Hangman card, you know, and you can see that often be referred to as sorcery, you know. And so this last whole year where you have a lot of these like screwed up situations happening on a political level and on societal level, and people are like shouting and jumping and really worked up and upset, and then at a certain point you realize like no amount of that is really causing any effect. And so that's like the classic situation where nothing you physically do or verbally do causes any change, and then people classically just turn to sorcery, you know.
Yeah.
Which I think they...
You know, it reminds me...
Go ahead.
Yeah, it reminds me of that moment when you're like, if you're scrying or if you're staring into a surface waiting for something to appear, you know, and it's just like blurry. And then finally, like, it just locks into place. Almost like those, like, magic eye. Like, that's like the magic eye painting, you know?
Yeah, totally. No, yeah, you can definitely... That's definitely true, because, like, Jupiter can be pretty blurry. Like, Pisces is pretty blurry, and Sagittarius is more pointed, but it's trying to pull a lot of things together to become pointed. It's trying to make that focus, and then Mercury is so focused. It's like looks at every detail like one at a time. And so definitely it's a really good analogy. Like when Mercury hits that moment, you're like, okay, here's what we're looking at, and the magic eye just like shows us like a big pentagram or like an image of Baphomet or something.
Yeah. You're like, I was there the whole time.
Yeah, totally.
we had it on the wall in the bathroom for 5 years, and one day I saw it.
Yeah, totally. He was always there.
Well, yeah.
What do we get next, Vaughn?
2 days later, on Thursday, October 19th, we get a new moon in Libra opposite Uranus in Aries. Wonderful time for new friendships.
Yeah, that's like this whole... I might just talk about this next whole time in tandem. There's like a bunch of things that happen here right in a row where you get the new moon in Libra opposite Uranus and Aries, and you get these kind of like friendships that maybe like you get it's like another hit of that Uranus thing that, you know, we'll get that a lot as the moon goes around. But I've mentioned in previous shows that because we have these successive like Jupiter opposite Uranus, Mercury opposite Uranus, and then it's going to be the sun, and all the planets are going to do this. You're going to see whatever that theme was play out on these different echelons. So with like Venus entering Libra, there's going to be a whole new sociality, in the whole social world lighting up and becoming kind of a more pleasurable place and a more festive and place of carousal and culture. And then so this potential to like communicate with a lot of new people and meet new people and new themes in life opening up that are kind of like these relationships that could be very experimental. You're like, oh yeah, I just met these new people and they're into mountain climbing, and I'm gonna go do some rock climbing with them. I've never done that before, and then that's kind of like an experiment. And then you'll have Mars entering Libra on the 22nd, and you'll start seeing a lot of the pros and cons of these new themes that are opening up with Mars and Venus in the same sign. And Venus is going to have an ability to kind of mitigate and chaperone Mars around, but you're going to get the really opposite yin and yang intentions kind of playing out, and see what's kind of like thorny and messed up and what really clashes and could be destructive about new relationships or new social schemes, and then you're also going to see what's really pleasurable and what brings you to more equilibrium. So it's a funny series of things that kind of all happens, and you get the experimentation, and then you get to like kind of then it's like let out of the lab like into the world, and then you get to take it for a test drive. But obviously when stuff's in that phase, you're still working out all the kinks. Like that's when the real accidents happen, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely seen a spike in kind of random social behavior suddenly since this Libra period has gotten rolling.
It seems like it's like a time of like there's potential or possibilities, but then what do you think? How would you think that would play into the way you should perceive possibilities or things around you? You know, is it a time to be wary, or really a time to like go for it, or still a time to analyze?
I think it's a time to go for it, but not dropping the analyzation. Maybe letting some of the wariness go away, but not just trusting that everything that's happening is going to be set, you know, as like the new mode. You know, that it still is an experiment, but the experiment requires the work and the experience. You don't just do the experiment is past the hypothesis. You know, you're not just doing the math at that point. You're actually seeing what happens.
Yeah. Like sort of delicate walking, maybe even a little speed walking, but no running.
But with Venus there, you are gonna trust to a degree that, you know, you're gonna let yourself have pleasure, you know.
Yeah.
That's part of the experiment. It's like, you know, I'm gonna do this pleasurable thing, and I'm just gonna see how that works in my life. You know, maybe I can keep doing that pleasurable thing, or maybe I'll realize how to articulate it or craft it or fine tune it just the way I need to after I do it. You know.
Yeah, and I guess in order to really experience that, maybe there has to be a part of this feminine aspect of letting go and trusting.
Sure.
And extending without having full control over what's happening, but having like a belief, like you know, you're pretty sure it's going to work out. Like you kind of know what's happening, you know what to expect, but you can sort of reach blindly for it.
Yeah, and you get the word grace a lot out of Libra in, you know, metaphor and meditation. There's definitely that part of faith-based religions, you know, where you're like, yeah, but, you know, by the grace of Venus, like, well, this will be all right, you know.
Yeah.
I guess it's just like concentrate on being poised, you know, because that'll let you change feet fast, you know, and then, but you're gonna be out on the dance floor, you know.
I was just handed a piece of serpentine. Kind of reminds me of that a little bit. It's definitely one of these stones that's for like friendship, a big friendship stone, but it's also like a Kundalini energy stone, but it's about like that sort of like thinking about the connection almost of like your spine, or like, but like the way that like your heart connects with your feet in that sort of way, where like serpentine is one of these stones that really, I feel like, relates to that aspect. And I don't know, yeah, it just came to me right now. It's just thinking that maybe that would have some further insight.
Yeah, for sure.
Into that idea.
Definitely keeping your heart connected to your feet is like perfect for this whole period. Do you have any other stone suggestions or any other
herb suggestions?
Yeah.
Yeah, the peacock aura has been a really big one for me lately. I remember I showed you that piece of it not too long ago when I picked it up.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel like that one's really sort of been related to maybe the movement of Venus in like this sort of laboratory setting, but like the way that, you know, you couldn't really even reproduce that in a lab. It's sort of like the lab of nature or something, you know, but it's really far out, and it has, I feel like it also relates to like Mercury, and I feel like it's this sort of moving Venus and Mercury sort of connection. That stone to me has been providing some insight for that, and like a way of sort of grounding that energy in like its physical form. And so yeah, peacock ore has been one I've been thinking of, that I was just thinking of again while we were having that conversation. But yeah, and the serpentine for sure has really been coming up a lot, thinking of friendship aspects and trying new things and extending yourself, and making those connections, like sort of bringing everything together for the full view and like your full potential. It's like that is a really powerful stone, maybe for right now too.
Yeah, and the lab of nature is certainly Venus's laboratory, right? You know, and then the peacock, also corresponding to Jupiter, is great if people want to really dive into the whole new Jupiter, the Jupiter in Scorpio, as like a kind of connection stone. And then also, like, you've been surfing a lot, right? That's definitely connecting the feet and the heart, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think that peacock ore has this effect too, where it's just that blue, but it has the blue and red together, but sort of like a third eye sense, also like the mind, but like the mind as like a beacon to like receive and send messages, and how like really that is what's sitting on top of that heart foot connection with your ground. And yeah, I think there's not a lot, it seems like, of sort of trust and faith and feeling and like sort of believing, and but like all through like a solid form of being like, oh, getting here through your ground, getting here by knowing that you're connected, and knowing that you got your balance.
Yeah, definitely practicing balance is good. Will be good for this whole period. I think the other thing about sending and receiving messages, which will be really strong here, is that even if the messages are only just kind of beacons, and I think you mentioned beacons, you know, that it's a good time to magnetize the people you want to you. So I think like preparations with lodestone and magnetic sand and things like that would be probably pretty good. You know, if you could mix that with like the other stones that you're mentioning, and
totally,
and be like, okay, you know, because Libra's attraction, you know, and Venus is attraction, and in Libra it's you know, people, social relationships. That would be a really good time if you were going to make Venusian talismans charged with lodestone and you know, like green wax, green ink, green paper, green fabric, bronze, copper.
And the serpentine is also green too, and
right,
really waxy,
yeah.
And like even shards of that could be used. It's really easy to break up and even grind into a powder.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that would be a really good mixture, like the peacock stone, the serpentine, lodestone, and magnetic sand, and yeah, made on Fridays or Monday nights, or there's a good election on I guess it's just after the show broadcasts, right?
Yes, but we talked about it last week.
Yeah, I think we talked about it last week. And then, but this whole period while Venus is in Libra, you know, especially if people keep their eyes on that stuff, if you use Planet Watcher or Astrodienst, or you can download apps for your phone that track the planetary hours. If you just make, you know, take a quick look and see what condition Venus is in, and then take your Venusian ingredients, and you can kind of mix something up for this season. That'll be pretty powerful, because we're not going to get her in rulership until next April, and we're not going to get her in exaltation till February. So this is your good like fall fall Venus period to work in. But yeah, any closing words or anything else you want to talk about, Ryan?
Well, one thing I was just thinking of was about the actual, like I feel like the peacock ore I was thinking of intuitively, sort of, for this moment, but then, like, remembering the actual sort of lore and history around it and its uses has really been about magnetism and creativity.
Oh, cool.
And I think that that's, like, maybe this other part of what this whole thing is like, is a lot of creativity, maybe surges in creativity.
Yeah.
And that could be, like, what the outcome of all of that turns into, you know, or what you take away from it.
Yeah, because Venus is definitely concerned with the arts and the cultural side of the arts, you know, like Venus in Libra is about like the art scene, you know, and then and how that operates and have it being a really pleasurable place. But yeah, then she's definitely like, she socializes and she's like the hostess, and she organizes that social scenario to be magnetic and charming and bring everyone together. You know, but the ultimate result is creativity. The ultimate result is the art, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's where it gets things can be really exciting, and I feel that a lot right now in these moments of just like, oh, like what is everything sort of leading to, or what's going to be the creative force that we're eventually, you know, could be something to really hang on to and use for survival.
Yeah, and it'll be cool with Jupiter there in Scorpio now. That's going to be the philosophy behind the art. You know, that you're going to see that kind of a philosophy of death and rebirth, like a philosophy of sorcery, a philosophy of magical practice, a philosophy of kind of archetypal psychology, and, you know, kind of the necromantic practice, or kind of like pondering the beyond, and like tantric sexual practice, and all that end of the spectrum of spirituality, you know, is where Jupiter's going to be coming from. So that's the art that's produced and the creativity that's collaborated for is kind of it has a really like kind of deep psychological kind of and, you know, a darker color to it, but more depth.
Yeah, I totally see it as sort of getting at pulling from the core, and just sort of, I know it's sort of like been such a time of like feeling things being uncertain, or, you know, out of control. You know, I feel like I've definitely had like that feeling of that vibe being around this fire, where it's just like, you know, where you kind of have to like roll with what's happening. But then, like, I think about people remembering and like knowing that actually there's like a lot to discover. It's like a lot to pull out from themselves, and that like any situation you're dealing with or what you've already been through leads you to more discovery. And I think that it's this creative aspect of what's coming out of things is really gonna be like the powerhouse, you know, and like kind of creating our own fuel.
Yeah,
for ourselves.
Totally. Cool. Well, thanks for talking to us.
It's a brief show.
Yeah, thanks for pulling me in. I gotta. I'll be on my hand. I'm here for us all.
Yeah.
And I love you guys. I'm really glad that you got the show rolling, and it's exciting.
Yeah, we'll have you back on soon.
Yes, love you too.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, that wraps it up. Thank you for listening to Liminal Light. Our theme music was composed by the ever-talented Asa Irons. This week's background music was excerpts of Miasma Septic Cup 5, music recorded in and around House Hookenthorne. Today's guest was the indelible and enduring Ryan Riehle of Dreamhouse, Bone Rattle, and Rotten Apples fame, medium, channeler, and mercurial mystic. I'm your host, Chrissy Pucciere Rapucci, and you can find me at atavisceral.com, atavisceral.com, where I post articles and forecasts, offer chart readings, talismanic concoctions, occult services, tarot, divination, and more. Thalxiepae, aglaphim, peasinoe, mulpe.